Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is where it's at the moment. If you are looking to talk job search, how to pass job interviews, how to get job interviews, how to negotiate offers, how to do networking, how to plan your career, all that stuff, all together. This is a Q&A. That's what it's for. So if you're seeing my beautiful face and you're a subscriber of mine, get in the chat, ask me some questions, what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with. I will do my best to help you. And the title of today's episode of Honest HR Nitrous is Stop Wasting Time on Job Boards. Let's fix your job search. Q&A. So yeah, and this is where we talk about not just job search, but not just a theory about how it's supposed to happen, but the real world gritty reality, complete with fake jobs, ghosting, rude recruiters, the whole shebang-a-bang. So if you are wanting to know something and you are wondering why perhaps your job search is not going anywhere fast, get in the chat. Let's talk about it. Sometimes Joey Plays is here already. That's great. And that individual, is that Cat? You got a picture of a cat. So I thought you were a dude, but I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. It's all good. Says, hi, Bill. Is it worth my time to write a classy reply to someone when I receive a no reply address rejection? Who do I write to if there was no associated contact? Is it even worth my time? Okay, a couple of things here. First of all, sometimes Joey Plays. First of all, you're awesome. Okay, I want you to know that. Now, a couple of things going on. First of all, don't use the, I know what you mean, but don't use the expression, is it worth my time? Okay? If you're doing something that can get you hired, it is always worth your time. Okay? Now, however, that being said, my question to you is, if they've already rejected you, okay, you said it was a rejection. Okay, they basically said, I'm sorry, we're not hiring you. Okay, why do you need to write back to them? Is my question. Okay, if I'm reading that correctly, and they've said sort of no, and that's their final word, why waste any more time on that? Like it's already a no. Unless there's anything to indicate that you could turn that into a yes, I would keep moving, right? So if it's a rejection and they've used a no reply address, that's like kind of 2 strikes already. I wouldn't bother at this point. Now, there may be mitigating circumstances. If this was like a dream job and you knew the people personally or something, and you were given to understand that there would be a different outcome or you'd receive a different type of message or something, then fair enough. If there was some other circumstances there. But if this is just what you've said is the whole thing, I'd keep moving, right? It's not worth trying to beat this dead horse, if it's already a no. So that's what I'd say. But that's not a stupid question. That's definitely a thing. No, I just, listen, I hear the expression, is it worth my time? Like from a lot of people when they reply, when they put comments on my YouTube channel, usually it's in the context of like, should I interview with you, or is it not worth my time? Should I get up and walk out of the interview at this point because it's not worth my time? It's like that comes across as quite arrogant. Now, I don't know what the situation is, but just like you're in the business of generating leads for people that are going to give you a job. You know what I'm saying? So if this is you and you're thinking like, I'm going to walk out of this interview, or they want me to interview with them, but it's not worth my time. It's like, then I would question maybe what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? If you invest all these man hours into like getting an interview only to walk out of the interview and like end it and like tell them it's a no, like unless they really cross the line, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't do that, right? You're already there. You might as well see where it goes. If it doesn't go anywhere, hey, no big loss, but you're there. You might as well maximize your chances of something happening. You never know. You might get an offer from these people, and that would be like a second offer to the one that you eventually get that you're really looking for or something. You know what I mean? So there you go. Sometimes Joey Play says, I know I'm awesome. Thanks, Bill. Well, good. It's good that you know that. It's good. And if you have any more questions, let me know. Yeah, I see there's 20 people here. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. That's, after all, what we do these for. Almunk says, hi, Bill. How can you tell if a job is fake? Sounds like it should be at legal issue, but I guess that's just what I think should be legal. Okay, well, first of all, it's not a legal issue in the vast majority of cases. Like, the thing is, if a company legitimately wants to hire someone and then they put up a job posting and then they change their mind, maybe because the financial results of the last quarter came in and they're in the red, they don't have any money to spend, so they have to like cut back, that's not like, oh, we're going to take you to court because, you're misleading people. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a little harsh. Now, I'm being kind because a lot of times we get fake jobs for a lot more nefarious reasons than that. And that really does get into an ethical gray area about like what they're doing, because they're lying right to your face on a lot of them. Okay. There is no one reason why a job is fake. There's a whole kaleidoscope of different reasons. One is the thing I just described with variations of it. Like, for example, a very common thing is that they post a job, they hire someone, and then they don't go back and take down the job posting. Okay, so when you see it, it appears legitimate. It was only posted like 4 days ago. Looks real. You apply. Unbeknownst to you, there is no job because it's been filled, right? So that would be like a fake job because there is no job, right? And if it's only 4 days old, you think like, well, it's still au courant. It still applies, right? That's a very sort of, employer-friendly example. And it runs the gamut all the way to scams on the other extreme where, people are like out to get you. You know what I mean? They're just out to get at you. If there's no job, they know there's no job. It's all an attempt to get your information. They want your entire resume. They want all your, your contact information, all your identity, everything that goes along with that so they can sell it. You know what I mean? And there's everything in between, right? So there's a lot of things going on there. Now, as to what are the like signs, how can you tell if the job is fake? There's a whole bunch of basic stuff, okay? And what I'm going to do is, instead of me just trying to say it all in like, a few minutes, I'm just going to do something very, very quickly. And let's see. So how can you tell? And I'm doing this so you will learn how to do this if you don't know how to tell if a job is fake. Okay. Right. There's no way to hide this stuff. Okay, so I typed into ChatGPT how to tell if a job is fake. Okay, too good to be true, unrealistic high pay. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Unprofessional communication. Yeah, like if they can't make their way through a sentence without tripping and falling on their face, that's a red flag. Okay. Emails from free domains, like, I don't know if that's the end of the world, but it's not a good sign. Overly pushy tone. Requests for personal info or financial info. That's a red flag. Okay. Anything that mentions this kind of stuff, right? Upfront payments. Yeah. No, not for the vast majority of things. Anything that mentions this, that's a red flag. no verifiable company details. This is another thing. They should have a physical address, right? That means like, a street address with like a city or like region, at least location, and then country equivalent of a postal code or zip code, whatever you use. Okay. Strange interview process. Okay. That's later on when you get an interview or maybe they tell you about it. Okay. You're hired without an actual interview, like things like this. Okay. Now, what you can do is on a lot of jobs, you can check, like if they're listed in an aggregator like Indeed. Indeed, what it does, you can post jobs on Indeed, but what Indeed does is it goes out, it crawls the web, it finds like all the jobs that are posted on other websites and then like brings them all to its site and displays them all together on its site, side by side, right? So it's an aggregator. It just collects them and displays them, right? Now, if you're seeing the job on an aggregator, then you should be able to also find it somewhere else, like on its own company's website. Okay, so that's a good way. And moreover, the recommendation is that you would apply for it from the company's website, not from the aggregator. Okay, because there's even more risk for like phishing and identity theft and stuff like that. Okay, so there's all kinds of other things, but what you can do is you could ask even more questions like, is this a scam? Is that a scam? And you can really get into it and learn a bit about that stuff, okay? So that's what I recommend you do. Do your homework on that. Start with things like ChatGPT, just asking basic questions and then go from there. It can narrow it down. There's a whole bunch of things going on the other end. There's companies doing market research. So once again, there is no job and they know it. So it's a very nefarious kind of thing. They're not trying to steal your information. They just want to see who's out there in the labor market looking for a job. They just want to keep their tabs on them, right? So and it's disguised as a job ad. And a lot of industrial espionage happens like this. Like what they'll do is they'll post a job and it's a fake job. But when you apply for it, they'll call you and say like, you have an interview. So they'll give you an address or whatever, or you could do it remotely, but they in the past they would do these things face to face also. So you go down and do an interview in some location and there is no job. It's just an attempt to interrogate you, to ask you confidential information about maybe what an employer is paying you and, stuff like this. And get that information. There's no job. It's just that you're beholden to them. So you'll want to be agreeable and answer questions. So this is their chance to like really ask you some very pointed, kind of fishy kind of questions and get answers. Right. So there's all kinds out there, but that's some of the stuff that you can use to spot them. Okay. Always be on your guard. Okay. Just don't give away like really vital personal information and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just as a matter of course. Hi, Bill. Is the job not related to my degree a good early career if not able to find a related job? This is CT3H. Listen, beggars can't be choosers. And if you need money, you need something, and you don't have anything else going for you, like you're not an entrepreneur, you're not an investor, you need a job, if obviously a job related to the thing you studied in school, directly related, would be a good first choice for most people. But hey, if they're offering you something, you might want to take it. Now, this is something I know a little bit about. I got an engineering degree, but when I came out of university and I was looking for a job, I got hired. I went into the railroad because they were looking for people with engineering degrees, not to be engineers. It was just that they had figured, and rightly so to a point, they figured that someone with an engineering degree, they should have certain qualities. They should be smart. They should be hardworking, punctual, good work ethic, trainable, blah, blah, blah. So they were hiring, and I became like a frontline supervisor of tradespeople, of all things, on the strength that I had an engineering degree. And then that's how I started in the railroad. So they were paying good money. derailed my career as an engineer. So like you would have a career progression where you would apprentice and then you would get to be a fully professional engineer with your stamp, and you could like stamp plans and they could build bridges and stuff. It's like I never went down that track because I got kind of sidelined in this detour, but that took me into the world of management and other things. So I did okay. But, listen, sometimes it's just the way life goes, and you have to decide for yourself if you want to try this or not. And a lot of times you just don't have enough information to really make a proper decision. So you're just taking a leap of faith, and sometimes you got to do that. And if you take it and it's not to your liking, remember, you can always be looking for a better job or a more apropos job, but you're doing it while you're employed and you got money coming in, So, hey, I would say go for it. There's in the absence of any real viable alternative. Margaret Comte says, I am being literally assaulted by recruiters. Looks like some taekwondo might be in order there, Margaret. You give them the whole, like, what was it? The cross kick, the Bruce Lee cross kick, that kind of thing. Roundhouse kick to the face kind of thing. Very important, when you're doing job search to be prepared. I've been trying to be kind to them, but I'm getting really overwhelmed. Any suggestions for me? I really don't want to be insensitive, but I could say you could just wear a fat suit. You could wear a fat suit that makes you look like me and then see what the reaction is. It'll be a social experiment, I'm not sure. Listen, that's a problem people look forward to, okay? So, I think you'll just have to try and bear up to it. But I wish you all the luck in the world, Margaret. Don't let this experience turn you into like a real arrogant biatch of a person, because, you know what I'm saying? Like, always be polite, always be, have good social skills. Don't like let these clowns erode that or convince you that you don't need to do that, because that will hurt you later on. So that's all I would say. A great thing to do is to just be able to demand, very lofty kind of expectations, say like, okay, I would love to talk to you, just so I'm expecting compensation in this range. So unless that describes what you're looking for, then it doesn't make sense. But, if the answer is yes, then sure. Prime says, what about cosmic requirements? Well, that depends where you are on the alpha plane, right? Or the astral plane. Okay. Or if Mars is in the house of the Ram and, this kind of thing, right? Let's not let this devolve into another really lame kind of thing where I try to do humor because I'm getting humorous questions. I'm not a comedian. I'm not funny. I don't want to try and do that. If you guys have serious stuff, I'll be happy to talk about it. How to justify gaps in a CV. Oh, great one. Okay, so first of all, the terminology is a bit off. In Europe, they say CV a lot. That's kind of what they mean by, in North America, they call it resume. And in North America, a CV is something different. That's like an academic type thing where you put all your academic publications and things like that. I assume you mean resume, like the document that has your work experience on it. The way you justify the gaps in that is you try to minimize it so they don't even notice it. That's like the best approach. But obviously, if there's like a big gap, you can't. Like, it just gets so big that you can't hide it. They'll spot it if they look at the dates, if they look at the year, things like this. Listen, what I would say is that anything up to 6 months, I don't consider really a gap. Not in this day and age. People are unemployed for, longer on average now than they were, say, 20 years ago. So, you know what I mean? Like, 10 years ago, they might have had a problem with like, a 6 month gap or something. I don't think they have a problem with a 6 month gap anymore. If you're talking about 2 years, then you're definitely going to need an explanation. So as I said, like if it's like a short gap and it's a current gap, nobody cares about a previous work gap. So if you worked and then you had a gap of 2 years, but then you got another job, nobody cares about that gap, right? They only care about a current work gap. So between now and your last employer, that's the only type of gap they care about. Try to minimize it or just don't say anything. So what you can do is you can, not that you want to out and out lie right to their face, but you just don't advertise the fact that you've actually left your previous employer. Like if it's only a matter of been 6 months or less, I'd maybe even see if I get away with that. And if you can't do that, then you need to do some stuff. Now, listen, the only real way that I know of to justify a gap in a way that a recruiter won't have an issue with it, okay, is to basically assure them that it was some kind of calculated decision. It wasn't that you were like let go or laid off and, it was upon you. Rather, it was like you left your job intentionally because you wanted to go back to school. Like it was a calculated career move, okay? And then during the gap, you would have to show that like, look, I took this education or this training or I did this volunteering, something like that. But education and training is the best, okay? And if you haven't done that so far, if you can't say that you've done any kind of education or training, go right now and just sign up for some free courses online. And then you can say truthfully, no, I've done these courses, right? Or I've been in these courses. So, it's not a lie. It's like, it's very true. And you could even talk about the details of the courses if you needed to, right? But the idea would be, you would say something along the lines of, listen, like, what I wanted to do is I wanted to brush up on some very important career related skills, either technical skills in my industry, my area, or more general skills like, like social skills, conversational skills, public speaking skills that would kind of like make me eligible for, positions of greater responsibility. Like that's what I'm trying to prepare myself for that. I want to be able to outperform on my job. I want to be able to have an edge above a lot of my coworkers. And I figured that improving my skills in these areas is the way to do it. So I left my job. There wasn't really great career prospects for me there. I left my job. I enrolled in training. I took the training. Now that I'm trained and I've tacked on these abilities and these skills, maybe some AI skills, things like this. Now I'm ready to rejoin the workforce, and I'm all the more valuable for having done this. Something like that. And just go quickly take like an AI course or some public speaking things. And then it's not a lie. It's legitimate. It all checks out, right? So that would be the only way you could really justify it. The problem with almost anything else is that in the recruiter's mind, it sort of raises a red flag that if this happened to you once, it may happen to you again. Right? Like, for example, if you had to take care of a sick family member or something and, you went off for 6 months or something, but then you're back, Now, if your sick family member died, then okay, that's not going to happen again. But if they didn't, then in the recruiter's mind, whether they admit to this or not, they may be thinking like, well, if you did that once, what's to stop you from doing it again? We hire you and then you go off again for 6 months. And we got to cover that, and we can't fire you because it's a legitimate thing. So they're always kind of like, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? So anyway, hopefully that should give you some ideas. I'll say one final thing, and that is that if there's a really big work gap, it becomes very similar in a practical sense to when people change careers. Recruiters just regard work gaps as risky. They do. Sometimes it's justified, sometimes it isn't. But they don't know, so they just regard everyone with a work gap as history as risky unless you can justify it really, really well. And in which case you can easily get a job, but over the hidden job market through networking. Nobody gives a rat's ass about work apps when you're doing that stuff. Okay, so just keep in mind, that's always like the big thing and the secret weapon you have in your back pocket. Prime says, what should we say to executives/employers when we call them for a job they posted? I'm trying to avoid the HR process. I don't know, because they'll probably just want to shift you to the official hiring process that they're a part of, right? Like, they initiated the job. They then got a recruiter involved, either internally or externally. That recruiter then posted the job. You're responding to it. Presumably, their process is you then deal with the recruiter on some level. Either you send in an application to their machine or you contact the recruiter through email or something. But in all likelihood, you won't be talking to the executive. So I don't know if you really can get, there might be exceptions, but the rule is you're not really going to get too far in that situation. The way you do that, I think I know what you're trying to do. The way you do that is you contact executives/employers that are likely to hire someone like you, okay, because they employ a lot of people that have your skills, right? But they haven't posted a job, right? That's how you do that. There is no official hiring process because they haven't posted a job, right? It's usually what happens is they have vacancies, but they're either filling it themselves without any kind of recruiter being involved, right? Which is the way most people get hired. Or, they haven't got round to setting this all up with the recruiter yet, okay? In which case you're sort of an early contender. In which case if you ask them and say, like there's multiple things you could ask for. You could just send them like a note and just say, hello, I'm here. I do this really well. If ever you're looking for someone who can do that, let me know, have a great day. That is sufficient in most cases, because if they're looking to hire someone with your skills and they haven't really gone through the full process with the recruiter, or they're just hoping to fill it themselves, which is what most people do, you landed right in their lap, and they may say, hey, we may have something. I don't know yet, but would you be interested in coming in and having a talk, or something like that, right? Or you could ask for an informational interview. There's a whole bunch of different things you could do. Okay, I mean, I talk about all those things in that course. It's not something I can just explain from scratch in like 2 minutes. It just doesn't work that way. But contacting a hiring manager when they've already gone through the trouble of posting the job officially and having a clear hiring process with the HR department, they're probably just going to refer you over to the HR department to their official process. Does that make any sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so that was Prime. Jeremy says, hi, Bill. Why do recruiters often ask for qualifications way above what the position requires? Well, they think they can get it, right? That's what they're shooting for. It's like a sort of best case scenario kind of thing. They can ask for it. A lot of times they don't get it. That's a common thing. Another common thing is that you're just out to lunch, because the problem is recruiters don't understand the jobs that they're hiring for, right? That's not their area of specialty. If a hiring manager who supervises mechanics in a garage calls the recruiter and says, I need you to post a job for me, here's what I'm looking for, here's kind of what the job is, go write that up, go post it, go find me some candidates that have these 5 things, okay? Set up the meetings, do some filtering, and then when you've got 5 good candidates that have these 5 things, call me and I'll sit in the interviews with you and I'll make a final decision. You know what I mean? Like, they don't understand. Like, what does a recruiter who went to school to learn labor laws know about being a grease monkey? You know what I'm saying? They don't. So their understanding of what the requirements of the job are limited to what the hiring manager has told them. And the hiring manager might not have told them very much. The hiring manager is very busy. And this whole hiring thing, that's a distraction for them. They've got their actual job to do. And this is kind of like an annoying little sideshow that takes them away from their actual job. That's why they like to slough it off onto recruiters and stuff. So sometimes recruiters don't understand what they're looking for. I remember, this is a lame story, but I remember like about 1 million years ago when I was in my 20s or something, and some local recruiter like called me up on the phone, and I guess I was looking for a job at the time, and they said like, oh yeah, this company, they're so good, you like she's obviously recruiting for them, and saying like, yeah, they've come up with their own logarithm for like how this stuff works. Yeah, it's like a logarithm that really sets them apart. And I was saying like, it hit me at the end of the phone call. Are you trying to say algorithm? This is before like people really use the term algorithm like they do today, And she's like, yeah, a logarithm. It's like, click. It's like, they don't know what they're talking about. So she's trying to talk up a company. She doesn't know the first thing about like what the company does. And I'm sure you guys can tell your own stories about stupidity like that, So that's sometimes why they ask for ridiculously lofty kind of things way above what the job requires. The other thing is that because they think that by asking for stuff like that, they'll get like a truly superior candidate. And it doesn't work that way. Because a lot of times the people that actually have that won't be at all interested in the money that this position pays. You know what I mean? That's another thing. Anyway, Airsoft Show-Offs says, which is a good title, says, when you are close to 50 and in a technical field, removing dates helps to fight ageism. What else can I do? Networking is what you can do. You don't network with recruiters. You network with hiring managers, right? You make them see your value. You see, the way people hire someone, it's very similar to the way people buy things in a store, right? You're shopping for a car, right? This is the analogy I use. And you talk to a car salesperson and they say, okay, let's see, I got a white one that's $10,000. I got a black one that's $20,000. I got an orange one that's $50,000, and I got a pink one that's $70,000. Where would you like to start? Right now, all you know is that they got a pink car that's $70,000. They got an orange car that's $50,000, or whatever I said. So you say, well, listen, if you got one that's 10 and 20, let's eliminate the 50 and the 70 right now, right? Okay. Because like all I know about them is the color and the price, and I don't really care about the color, but why would I pay 70 when I could get one for 10, right? So let's look at the 10 and the 20. So they eliminate two. Now that's kind of what they're doing in like job search, like in the recruitment and selection process. You got 5 candidates, right? You've got different salary expectations. A lot of times they ask salary expectations right up front. And based on that, like even during the application, they'll say like, what are your salary? Enter your salary expectations. And if it's above a certain amount, say in this case 30, they just eliminate you automatically. A human doesn't even see your resume, right? Okay. Now, what these people didn't realize was that the ones that they just eliminated, like in the case of the cars, they eliminated the orange car for 50, the red car for 70, or the pink car for 70. What they didn't realize was that was the red car was a Ferrari and the pink car was a Lamborghini. These things cost the price of a house to buy, but they had them for $50,000 and $70,000, which is an absolute steal. It's like 20% of what they're worth, right? But they just eliminated them out of hand without even taking a good look at them, based purely on price, right? Okay. So that's kind of like the recruitment and selection process that recruiters do. Okay. Now, when you do networking, it's a little bit different. Okay. If you do things like informational interviews, it works completely differently. First of all, you're not talking about how awesome you are. You're showing how awesome you are. You're giving them a free sample of what it would be like to work with you, right? First of all, you've got the initiative to even do this in the first place, which eliminates 99% of clients usually, or candidates, I should say. Secondly, you're showing the hiring manager directly how professional you are, how likable you are, how much you know your stuff, because you're presumably going to talk shop, right? So they see how much you know, even in just the nature of the questions you ask and things like this. They get it. Do they like you? Are you the type of person they would want to work with? You know, they've got a free sample of what it would be like working with you. They can tell you're not crazy. They can tell you're not, you know, some kind of kleptomaniac, or you know what I mean? Like, you're already showing all of this, right? So if that hiring manager is looking to fill a position, what are their choices? They've got a stack of resumes, people that are strangers that they've never met, right? Or the other alternative is they've met you. You're a contender. You guys get along. You're easy to talk to. You're professional. You dress in appropriate attire. You present yourself well. You know, you guys get along. Your communication style, work style kind of clicks. They've seen that you take initiative. That signals you obviously care about this job. You wouldn't do this to just any job. You do it to a job you care about because you're going to great lengths, you know, to do this, right? Who would you pick? It'd be a no-brainer. You'd pick the person you've met, unless there's like some weird, obvious red flag. You'd pick that person, right? They're head and shoulders above these resumes. You know, that's how this stuff works. You don't get hired because you're the best or the least risky. You get hired because you're the one that showed up, whereas nobody else did. You know, that says so much about you. That's the reason why a lot of people don't do this. They, you know, this is not a shoo-in thing that everybody does. So the people that do it, it really elevates you above the crowd. And the other thing is that a lot of hiring managers, they might be 50. A 50-year-old is not going to reject a 50-year-old on the basis that they're 50. You know what I'm saying? A 22-year-old might reject a 50-year-old on the basis of them being 50. In the same way, a 65-year-old will reject a 22-year-old on the basis of them being 22. But a 65-year-old is not going to reject a 65-year-old, especially if they get along, you know? Generally speaking. So that's another way to combat ageism. The great thing about going and talking to people 1 or 2 levels up is that they tend to be more in your age bracket, you know? So they're gonna click with you more. Anyway, I spent a lot of time on that question, but hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Sorry, there's a lot of questions building up here. I got to get to this. Okay, where was that? Sorry, this feed keeps jumping on me, and then I have to find where I was. Okay, Jeremy. Okay, so that was Airsoft Show-Off. So Jeremy Mitchell says, requires to be successful. Why do recruiters often ask qualifications way above? Okay. Yeah, I think I sort of touched on that. Margaret says, gaps like life events like childcare or medical leave work too. I agree that doing education during that time really helps. My career gap wasn't hurt by my job prospects. Yeah, for that stuff, I would just say networking. Like, you know, networking doesn't give a crap about a work gap. You know what I mean? If you're in, like the thing I just described a second ago, you're there in front of them. You're the only one that showed up. It signals that you're obviously enthusiastic about doing this exact job here. You know, you care. They've got a free sample of what you're like. You're awesome. You're easy to deal with. You know, they click with you. You know what I mean? They can ask you questions. You're asking them questions about, you know, the work that that you and they do. And it's clear, you know what your stuff is, you know, God. It's clear you know what you're talking about. You know your stuff. That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? That says so much than in a job interview when they say, like, why should we hire you? What are your greatest weaknesses? You know what I mean? Like, you're getting much more of a better insight into the person, having a casual conversation, just talking about shop related stuff. Like, you know, if you're trying to get a job as a secretary in a school, you're talking to them about, you know, being a secretary. It's clear you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So if you're coming off like maternity leave or taking care of a family member or something, like that's the number one way to do it. Just learn about the absolute basics of networking. If you're capable of making friends and retaining friendships for more than 6 months, you can do this. It's really not that hard. It's just understanding some basic rules of how you approach a stranger. You know what I mean? Incidentally, if you're wanting to learn all that stuff from me and you want me to go right through the whole thing with you, all the principles and what to do with templates, blah, 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 check out that course. That's what's in that course that I think is like the main value. You know, it's like most people get hired through networking. You don't believe me? Go look it up. Go do your own research. Most people get hired through networking than get hired through a recruiter. Okay? Recruiters are not the most common way of getting hired. You know, don't take my word for that. If that's shocking to you, go look it up. Go look it up through a whole bunch of independent sources. You know, learn this stuff, right? If you got kids now because you're off on maternity leave, maybe you meet other parents during a soccer game or a little league game, whatever people do, and you know that leads to opportunities, right? Someone says, "Oh, I work in that school," and they say, "Oh, well, I'm a school secretary. I need to get back into the job market. Is there anything opening up there?" And they say, "I don't know, but I can talk to the principal and I can ask if they'd like to talk to you because they might have something." It's like, sure, yeah, you know, I'm up for it. There you go. You know, you don't even need that. You could reach out to the principal of a school directly. Between LinkedIn and Google Maps, you can discover all that. And then that's the channel over which to connect with them. And you can send them a message. CT3H says, thank you. I have one more question. Should 2-year full-time experience before college and not related to my degree be mentioned in experience section of resume? Well, I can't answer that for you. It depends what else you have, and it depends what question they're asking. You see, you've got experience before college, and you've also got your experience in college, right? So, for example, if they say, like, tell me about a time you led a team to complete a project on time, you know, and it was a success. You could say, well, you know, in my college education, I was in this class, and in this class, we had to do a project, and I was, you know, in a group of like 6 people that all did this project, and because of maybe the work ethic of some other people, I ended up taking the lead on it and coordinating the group, and you know, doing the division of labor and assigning the duties to all the others, and they did it, and I kind of had to get on their case a little bit to kind of make sure the work got done, but they did it, and we put it all together. I integrated it, and I took the lead on presenting it, and we were commended for the great job he did. You know, so I took responsibility. I made sure that people pulled their weight through communicating with them in a very effective way, and blah, blah, blah. You know, you're using your experiences in school to show that you have certain skills and you've done certain things. You know, if they ask you a question where the best example of that was this experience you did before university or before college, you know, maybe you were painting houses as like a casual summer job or something, you can mention that, you know. Now, on your resume, if it doesn't have anything directly to do with what the requirements were that they said in the job posting, maybe you left it off your resume, right? Because there was nothing in that job that really related to the requirements for this position, right? So I can understand if you left it off, but you would mention it in answering job questions. If it wasn't totally unrelated, you could like mention it just on the, you know, at the bottom of the resume, at the end of the experience section. You know, I also did this, maybe a couple lines, right? You know, so there's no real ironclad rule. If you have the experience and it does demonstrate certain things, it's not the end of the world to like include it. But if that job and its job title doesn't relate directly to the job that you're going for now, then don't feature it very prominently because it'll look like you're not a fit. You know what I'm saying? So does that make sense? I mean, you use it if it's necessary, but you don't like have it as your poster child because if it's unrelated to the job you're going for, right? Tommy Z says, update on my interview. I think it went well, even though I was late due to train issues. But I communicated an hour and a half in advance. When I noticed it in the interview, I matched their tone. And she complimented my portfolio and liked how I was brand focused matching. It went well. She made a decision. In 2 weeks, she said she wished she could make it sooner. Oh, okay. Okay. So you're still waiting to hear. Okay. Well, best of luck, Tommy's. Listen, in most interviews, they'll always say good things. They won't say bad things to your face, even if it's a no, you know? Now, you know, I'm not trying to discourage you. Let's take this as a yes. But I'm just saying nice things about you, that's kind of, what you'll find is you'll find a lot of recruiters will always do that, even when it turns out to be a no. They'll say all these nice things about you, and then you get a message that says, sorry, it didn't work out. So listen, I'm just saying that for this reason. You know, if that happens, don't sweat it. That's how these things go, okay? And it's not a reflection on you, okay? Everybody is going to be rejected more than they get accepted, right? That's just how it goes, okay? So hopefully this works out. You hit a hole in one. If not, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean a thing. Dust yourself off and keep going. Always focus. And right now, you're probably going to be tempted to just sit and wait by the phone, right? You don't want to look for more jobs and pursue more leads because you're still hoping this one will work out, right? You got to resist that. Always move forward, okay? Let's hope this one works out. But in the meantime, let's see if we can get another opportunity, another lead, get some other interviews lined up. Maybe even see if we can get 2 offers at once. That's the goal. Okay, so always take that attitude. And that way you cover all your bases. So even if this one is a no, you still have stuff that hopefully you've managed to line up in the meantime. Okay? But I wish you every bit of luck, Tommy Z. Prime says, but the CTO himself didn't know some stuff I mentioned, so it sounds like a double standard. How should I combat this? Okay, oh, did I miss one here? I guess I did here. It says, last time I got to know the founders of a company, and they said they would like to work with me, but they sent me to a CTO who grilled me for not knowing 2 to 3 terminologies and industry conventions. Yeah, I think I know what's going on here. Okay. There's been several times in my life where I've met people that they're sheltered, and you know, maybe their entire career took place at one company or in one industry, very insular kind of industry, right? And they've never been outside of it, right? So what they don't realize is that, you know, that particular company or that particular corner of that industry has certain lingo, like terminology. It has certain practices, certain conventions, certain expectations. This is all called the culture, right? Even certain terms like acronyms that they throw around, stupidly thinking that like everyone in the world knows what that is. When in reality, these people are so sheltered, they don't realize that's a term that's only used at your company. You do realize that, right? It's only used at your company, right? So the problem is these people go to a job interview and a candidate comes in and the candidate like is talking about something, right? The candidate's never worked at this company. So they're unfamiliar with the lingo that the CTO or whoever this person is using, right? And then the CTO arrogantly thinks that, oh, you know, everybody should know these terms. What are they teaching you at school? You can't have been a very good student. because you've never heard of this, right? They're morons, right? They're sheltered, ignorant morons. Wouldn't be the first chief technical officer that I've met that, fits that description. The other thing is, if it's a technical officer, usually that means that they're a technical person. They're some kind of like computer scientist, computer engineer, any other type of engineer, right? They're technical people. And usually their flaws is that they have extremely underdeveloped social skills. So they're arrogant, they're annoying, they're rude, and they think it's okay. They don't realize just how off-putting they are to people who meet them. You know what I mean? So anyway, it would not surprise me if that was what was going on here. A chief technical officer that's raking you over the coals for not knowing some terms, but yet they're not familiar with things that you would know that might be related to their field. Wouldn't be the first time I've seen that. Anyway, I'm not sure if that's what's going on, but it would not surprise me to learn that that's actually what was happening behind the scenes. Tommy Zzz says, how do I calm my nerves in these 2 weeks about this interview? It's a year since I had this level of interest. How can I use this as momentum? They asked me that in a pre-screen. I guess I matched their pay range. Listen, Tommy, it's great that you got this, okay? Now, how do you calm your nerves? Here's what I would do. First of all, like I said, focus on moving forward. Tell yourself that this is not going to work out. In fact, you might want to tell yourself that the odds are this is not going to work out because that's the reality, right? So don't just sit idle for 2 weeks or whatever it is until you take the next step with these people. That would be doing you a disservice. The odds are is that this is not going to work out. The odds of any one job opportunity working out are much less than 50%. It's far more likely it's going to be a no than it will be a yes, okay? Right? So tell yourself that. This is an anomaly, okay? Now, that all sounds very negative, very depressing. That's not what I'm going for here. I'm doing this to help you. What you want to do is you want to keep moving forward. Keep pursuing as many leads as possible. Pretend this lead you have doesn't exist, okay? And proceed forward at full speed. Try to make something else happen, okay? Because you know what feels good? It's having more than one lead, more than one iron in the fire that could work out. If you had 3 job interviews lined up next week, you'd probably feel even better, right? And even if this one or another one doesn't work out, hey, you still got 2 more, right? So always shoot for that, right? That's what makes you feel good, like mentally. You take care of yourself mentally so you don't get depressed doing this process, because it can be a very demoralizing process, as I'm sure you know. But it also, coincidentally, it's not just good for your mind, it's actually good to achieve real world results. You will get hired sooner if you take this approach, okay? So push these people out of your mind. Tell yourself it's highly likely it's not going to work out, despite how encouraging it does feel emotionally right now. With your brain, you know that the odds are it's not going to work out, even if with your heart you're getting your hopes up, okay? And then do everything in your power to forget about them and move forward. Okay? I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, so I don't know of any weird mental tricks you can use to make yourself feel any different than what you do, but that's the reality of what's going on, and that's what you should be doing. Okay? So try and push yourself in that direction, and hopefully everything will just fall into place. Luca says, hi, you helped me so much with interviews. Thank you. Do you have any specific tips for internships? I just did a video on that, didn't I? I thought I had a video that came out yesterday on internships. Check that out for what it's worth. It was regarding getting internships. The only thing I'll say, apart from watching that video about internships, is if you do get an internship, which I hope you do, take full advantage of it, okay? And what that means is a lot of companies, they end up hiring people who did their internship with that company. So do everything you can while you're there, while you're on the inside, to be the one that they select if they're looking to hire a couple of people, right? Then while you're there, get a lot of your coworkers and the managers and stuff that you're going to be working around, get them to be references. Okay, so like you go up to them, you say, "Can I use you as a reference?" If that's okay, all I need is your phone number, and if are you okay with that? That kind of thing. And they say, "Sure." Say, "Okay, all I need is your phone number and your email address, and I will let you know if I give this out to anyone." Right? So get as many references as you can, because they're in industry, in management positions in that industry that carry some weight. See if anybody will write you a letter of recommendation while you're there. Maybe your boss. So if you work at that company, you'll report to a boss. By the end of it, see if you can walk out of there with one or more letters of recommendation. Maybe they write it directly into LinkedIn, or maybe they write you an actual letter that you can include with job applications or whatever, right? And then while you're also there and you're on the inside of a company, right, there's tremendous networking opportunities. So go and talk to your boss. Go and talk to your boss's boss. Go and talk to some of the other managers that are kind of maybe at the same level as your boss, but they manage different areas. Just go up to them and say, "Hey, listen, I work in that department. I'm an intern, but listen, I don't want to bother you, but I'm quite interested in what you guys do in this area. You think you might be able to just give me a very quick tour? I'm just interested. Is that possible?" Something like that. And most people, if you approach them, just after lunch on a Friday or something, they're not going to be all stressed out. They're not going to be all in the middle of 10 things. They'll be, "Sure, yeah, no problem." And, then they'll like you. And then if there's ever any job opportunities in their department, you can always come back to them and say like, "Hey, if I have any questions about this going forward, is it okay if I call you? Is that all right?" Most people say yes. You can call them, you can hit them up for a job if your internship ends or something like that, right? So there's a lot of things you can get out of an internship or about being with a company, because you're on the inside and you have access to all this stuff, right? So if you get it, I hope you do. I think that's still a question mark, right? Take full advantage of things like this. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm glad that your interviews are going well. Luca. Tommy says, "Listen, I'm aware of that alternative, and thank you for pointing that out." Yeah, sorry if I was a little direct on that. I didn't mean to be. I'm just trying to help with that. As I said, I'm not a therapist. I'm not like, it's in terms of how to think or how to make yourself feel different ways. Sorry, man, not my area of expertise. But there are people out there that can help with that kind of stuff. They can actually give you like real tips to do that actually works. So maybe try that. There's a YouTuber that, I don't know if you've seen this, like we do a collaboration every 2 weeks. Her name is Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. Now she's a recruiter, but she's also someone that's done like a lot of psychology type stuff. I'm not sure of her exact history, but she knows a hell of a lot about that kind of stuff. So she might be able to help you with that. It is important. It's a really big deal. Taking care of your mind when you're between jobs and stuff is damn important. We're at the lowest point we are in our lives, barring like a death in the family or something. It's serious stuff. And especially when you're getting all this rejection, like constantly, it's like being kicked when you're down, so that stuff is a lot more important than a lot of people want to admit, So best of luck. Prime says, "So how do you deal with the weird CTOs, as I mentioned before?" Well, you tell yourself that this person is a flaming jackass, and get on with your life. That's kind of the approach I would recommend. You know what I mean? You're going to meet these clowns like as you go through life, and the thing to do is just not let it upset you, you know? It's like, look, all I know is that this person is in a job interview. They're in a position of power. You're not. You're a candidate. You're basically going on your knees to these people to ask for a job. It's a matter of survival for you. And this person is behaving, from what you've described, in a very arrogant, condescending, callous way. You know, they're being offensive. They're being rude. I don't have any patience for people like that. I don't really care about what might be going on in their lives that triggers this kind of behavior, but I really don't care. It's just inappropriate. You're making people feel bad, and you're doing what I just said. You're kicking people when they're down, you know? There's a reason why there's like kind of a code of conduct of you know, in professional situations. This is one of them, you know, and this person is violating that, you know? So let's call a spade a spade. It's unfortunate that you had to meet this individual. You know, maybe one day the roles will be reversed and they'll get a taste of their own medicine and they'll think twice before acting in such an arrogant way. I mean, I hate to say it, but, you know, I hope I don't have to eat my words one day, but you know what I mean? That's what I think. Okay, now I don't know. I'm not an expert in, you know, like what, like I would not deal with them at all. Like you really want to work for this person if this is how you feel? Listen, you answer their questions. You don't end the interview prematurely and say like, F you, you know, I'm out of here, you know, or whatever, you know, you hear them out, you see how it goes. And then if you never hear from them again, it's a blessing. You know, if they do decide to offer you a job at the end of this process, it's up to you if you want to take it. You might want to take it and see how it goes, but you know what I mean? Those are your kind of options, right? Hi to Amar Ali. Luca says, okay, thanks. I haven't seen that video yet. That's going to be so useful. Okay, well, hopefully it is. Mike G says, what types of questions should I expect for an interview with the hiring manager's boss? It runs the gamut. Usually they care about your attitude, like higher level people, like, you know, people that like, you know, run the company or own the company. They care more about like what your attitude is, rather than the niggling little details of like precisely what your skills are and stuff like this. They may ask, it's conceivable they might ask like a behavioral based question, but you know, generally they're going to be tuned into sort of like the broad strokes, and the broad strokes are your attitude, your ambition, and you know, just your personality. That's the kind of stuff that generally speaking they're more tuned into. But they could ask like absolutely anything. You know, it takes all kinds. Sometimes you get company owners who started out like, you know, at where the rubber meets the road at the bottom. And so they take pride in like, oh, you know, I came from the gutter. I worked my way up. I started as a busboy and I worked my way up, you know. So you're trying to get a job as a busboy, and they'll come in and they'll ask you all kinds of like technical questions of like, you know, if you were a busboy, what would you do? Like they know, you know, they might have done it 50 years ago, you know, who knows? You know what I'm saying? So you get all kinds, right? But generally speaking, they care about the broad strokes. Okay? Big things. Attitude, ambition, and personality. Like what your commitment is. What, you know, do you consider like a reasonable life-work balance? You know, like stuff like that, you know? All about the network. Okay. You're welcome. Luca. Prime says, after the interview with the CTO, they sent me an email that I didn't know these industry conventions and other stuff they never questioned about. So I wrote in a way that as if I applied for the job, but I was sent there by the founders, which was weird for me. Listen, like I wouldn't, honestly, Prime, I wouldn't push it anymore. I wouldn't, like, look, each to their own. For me personally, I wouldn't waste any more of my time and effort arguing with this person. Look, if they want to hire you, great. If they don't, fine. Just piss off, and then I can get on with my life. And I'll find an employer that I can add value for, and they actually appreciate me. You know what I mean? But like, why argue it? Like what I'm saying. Like what is I don't understand this other, like, really, a chief technical officer is going to argue with a candidate over something like remotely? Like, that's retarded. Is this like a startup or something? Where like anybody and their brother's mom's dog can be like, a C-level executive? I mean, that's weird. That's just weird. Sous-Marin Nucléaire says, "Hi, Bill. In regards to the resume, any advice on how to present things? I mean, underneath the job title, what should you input? Solely things you did, or more phrase it like competencies each time?" Listen. Okay. Madame Sous-Marin or Monsieur Sous-Marin. The resume exists for one purpose and one purpose only. It's to get you an interview. That's what it exists for. Okay. It has no other function. Okay. It's not this like record of you that like represents you in a general sense to everyone. That's not what it is. You're using it for one purpose only, to get you an interview. How do you get the interview? You convince them that you have what they're looking for. Okay? It's not about you, it's about them. What are they looking for? Oh, they're looking for this. Oh, you happen to have that. Okay. That goes on your resume. Right? Oh, they said that they're looking for this education, this experience, these skills. You got those? Okay. Put them on your resume, right at the top. They're looking at you to see if you have those 5 things. They look at your resume. Hey, look, there they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. The first things I saw. Okay. This looks like it has potential. And then you get shortlisted, right? As opposed to your buddy who also applied for the same job, and they said, we're looking for these 5 things. So let's see. Let's take a look at your buddy's resume. Now, does this person have those 5 things? That's the only thing I care about. Oh, they don't. I don't see them anywhere, but they've told me all about these other things they have. Well, great. But I don't care about that. So, no, you don't get shortlisted, right? So the resume exists for that purpose. Its sole purpose is to tell them what they're looking for. Do you have what they're looking for or not? That's the only thing they care about, right? It serves no other purpose. So that should inform you what you should have on there. So depending on the job that the job posting, what they said in their requirements, so looking for these things, that should inform you what you should speak to, and you should make that damn prominent, okay? If you've got a bunch of things that you're proud of, but they didn't ask for it, and it seems to be unrelated to the job, generally speaking, you'd want to leave those off. There's exceptions if, it can be somewhat related to this thing, but it's a stretch. They're not thinking like that. They're thinking of, do you have these things I said I'm looking for? No? Okay, then next. That's how they think, okay? Hopefully what you should put on your resume now is clear, okay? You must tailor your resume to every job. Okay, it really doesn't matter, like when you say how to present things, like if we're talking about like fonts, we're talking about, like formatting, none of that stuff really matters. Okay, Sous-Marin, you're no need to spend time on these. We'll look at it tomorrow. Good night. Okay. Well, hopefully you get the answer there. Prime says, for the job, but it was sent there by the founders, which is weird for me. Yeah, okay. I remember you saying that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Look, I kind of said what I think about the situation. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Alex says, me and my colleague collaborate well, even if He is 3 months experience and knows about the line productions. What I know, we are both helped by the line leader when we do changeover. Okay, great. Prime says, also, sometimes the interviewer asks for skills in fields that are not related at all. For example, website development and AI technology. How do we deal with such a situation when they expect us to know? That's a tough one. Like, I don't have the answer for anything that, like, everything that everyone puts on there. All I know is that there's a lot of idiots out there that heard that AI is good. They don't know what it is, but they've heard that it's a really in-demand skill because it's very trendy right now. So they slap that on, and then they ask you all about it while they simultaneously know nothing about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the situation, right? So how do you appease these people? You just basically say, well, yeah, I know AI and, whatever, whatever they're expecting, because it's so stupid anyway. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, look, you don't have control over them. Okay, that's the thing. I understand the frustration here, but if some employer, whether it's the hiring manager or the recruiter, has just got their head up their ass, they're asking for stupid things, they're asking for things that they themselves don't even understand. It's like, it might not be possible to appease them. You know what I mean? It turns out you could go down there and you could argue about this stuff, or you could not, and it turns out they're going to pick whoever they like the most anyway. It had nothing to do with, AI skills or whatever. You know what I mean? The only thing that they were looking for is that when they mentioned AI, you didn't go, what? What's that? That was the only thing that they were looking for. You seemed like you knew what it was. You seemed like you'd used it before. Okay. Check, that kind of thing. It's impossible to say what's in their head. Okay. So you go down there, and if you can speak intelligently about it, if asked, that's all you can do. Don't act like anything that they ask for is perfectly reasonable, and you should be able to dance to whatever tune they come up with. That's not the reality. You get people that are asking for idiotic things that they themselves don't understand because they don't know what they're doing. We do see that a lot. Okay, so don't worry about it. I know it's frustrating as hell. Just do your best, right? There is no right answer. And I've talked about that, where you go to interviews and people just have their mind made up about something and they're wrong. And that means you either have to contradict them, or you have to sort of make up some weird lie on the spot because what they're asking for doesn't exist, But you can't tell them that, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, you're in that situation. It's just it's a no-win situation. So all you can really do is do your best and try to be as likable as you possibly can. Okay. If you get all like insulted in the interview and offended, and like you're visibly offended and agitated, like with your body language and everything, that probably is an automatic fail, right? And maybe other candidates, were justified in doing just that. That's what they did. But they were eliminated because of it. Maybe you came in, and we all know what they're asking about is BS, but at least you were pleasant and you didn't let it ruin the encounter. You answered the best you could. You basically said, like, look, I know the vast majority of AI technologies that are out right now. I've used most of them. I don't know how to do all the advanced coding in absolutely every application, but I know my way around it, and I'm highly trainable. And this stuff is evolving all the time. So whatever comes out, because I'm trainable and I have a track record, as you can see, of being highly trainable, that stuff is not going to be an issue for me going forward using it. And then you just sort of like try and be friendly and relatable and that kind of stuff. And then it turns out that's all they needed. Right? It's like you're talking to a recruiter. What the hell does a recruiter know about AI? Nothing. Right? They're just a consumer. They know about as much about AI as everybody's parents do. Alex Roska says he is a line leader that helps a lot. Okay, so what was the context of this again? Me and my colleague, Claire. Okay. He asked us to call him if we don't have materials of a sudden he comes. What? He comes too short to supervise and always asks all is well. I got used to him, so he stayed quiet. Okay, like do you have a question? Alex, maybe ask your question, because you're telling a story. I don't really know where it's going. Curran says, hiya, just joined after work. Well, hiya, Curran. It's good to have you here. Amar Ali says, recent experience that I'm sharing with you is in one of my interviews, the CEO looks very interested in hiring me, and I'm like, give me any challenge or test, but suddenly he started wasting time. Okay. Like, he is not interested in hiring me anymore. I don't understand that behavior. Okay. Yeah, I can't comment. I mean, hey, look, maybe they were looking for a specific thing, or maybe the guy's an idiot. I mean, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But like, generally speaking, if you're talking to a CEO in like a mid-sized company or whatever this is, they care about, like I said earlier, they care about big stuff. They care about your attitude. They care about, your personality. They care about your ambition, this kind of thing. You know what I mean? They're not really there usually to grill you about little details, technical details of things. You know, that there's always exceptions to everything, but that's usually the case, right? Okay, so like, give me a challenge or test. That's usually not something that the CEO would be doing. I don't know what they said to provoke that reply from you. Like, maybe they said something weird, or, I don't know. Current T, a bit of an update. At my previous full-time job interview, I was their second choice. I was not fluent in Spanish or Latin, so I wasn't selected. Wouldn't have represented the community demographic. Okay. I completely understand their reason. Just had another interview yesterday that seemed to go much better. See, that's political. Oh, you wouldn't have represented the demographic. That's usually political. Now, there's some times where that makes a lot of sense. Like, for example, in the sales department, if you're trying to sell to many different types of people, it helps if you have a sales force made up of many different types of people, so that they can relate more to their customers and understand how to communicate with them and in an effective way, things like that, right? But as I'm sure you know, a lot of this stuff has gotten very political in the last few years. And so now people are like using reasons like that to kind of do whatever they want to do, some like agenda they want it to do. So, it's impossible to know if that's going on, or if it is, what they're trying to do. It just, you walk into a situation and, all you can do is you can just respond to what's in front of you. That's all, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, hey, it's not anything to do with you. It just depends on what these people happen to be looking for, and that's nothing you have control over. Okay, Alex Rosca says, 3 persons, me, my colleague, and a line leader that helped us with the changeover, but always micromanages us out of the blue to plan. That's why he helps with the changeover, always asking, okay. Okay, me and my colleague and a line leader that help us with the changeover, but always micromanages us out of the blue to do the plan. That's why he helps. Sorry, Alex, if you write a paragraph that's all one sentence with no punctuation in it, sorry, you lost me. You break up your thoughts into small sentences, and then even if the grammar isn't like perfect, people can still understand exactly what you're saying. Okay, but when you just jam it all into one sentence, sorry. Incidentally, I touch on stuff like that in this course, by the way. Check that course out if you want to learn how to communicate in English professionally. That's where I put all my learning that I learned over about 20 years, going from a frontline manager to a CEO, all the communication skills all in one place. So if you're interested in hearing that or learning that, what that can do is it can make you a contender for management type jobs. So people look at you as a contender for being moved up. When you move up, you have to tack on several things. This is one of them. Okay, so if you're interested in that, check that out. There's a link in the description box. If you're just looking to get hired, like how to work on your resume, how to answer job interview questions, and then how to do networking, especially for introverts, where you're using a lot of like social networking and stuff to like do all the heavy lifting. Check out that course. Okay, my Get Hired course, very popular course. And a lot of people have used that. It's sort of all my advice all in one place from beginning to end. It covers a lot of overlap with my YouTube channel when it comes to the posted job stuff. But the difference is also that it has all the hidden job stuff, all the networking stuff on there that I don't really have on my YouTube channel. So that's the big difference. But check that out. If you're looking to get hired, it's not going anywhere fast, and you're wondering, like, how does this stuff work? That'll probably be a good place to start with me, if you want to do it with me. Prime says, if we want to contact the executive/employer directly about an already posted job, is there a way to win as opposed to a case where they didn't post the job? This is very similar to, did you ask this earlier? This is very similar to something I answered like a while ago today. If you want to contact the executive/employer directly about an already posted job, is there a way to win as opposed to the case where they didn't post? Not that I know of. I mean, you could try it, go for it. But the odds are is they're just going to simply refer you to the hiring process. You see, in case it isn't clear, what they've done is they've made the process official, and they've decided this is how we would like to process you if you are interested in applying for this job. So they tell you what to do on the job posting. They say, go here and apply, or they say, send an email to this email address with your resume and whatever. They'll tell you what to do. This is what they want you to do. Now, if you ask anyone at the company, I know that's what you want me to do, but I want to talk to you about it, right? If you do that, the odds are that they're going to say, well, I'm sorry, but what you should do is follow the official process we've already told you to follow and apply through standard channels. That's what we've just told you and you're not listening to, So, you know what I mean? That's the response you can expect. There's always exceptions in the real world, like it takes all kinds. Sometimes, you talk to someone and they'll talk to you and they'll invite you in and they'll talk all about it. And maybe they'll totally sidestep the official process. I mean, who knows? It's not impossible. But if you're asking like what I would recommend, I would say, like I already said, that's not the most promising way to go about it. You know what I mean? If it's posted officially, then they want you to go through official channels, and they probably won't be happy with you if you're trying to get around that, right? If it's not yet posted, then it's up for grabs. There is no official process. It's first come, first serve. Whoever can convince the hiring manager who originates the job that, maybe they should consider you, especially early on when there's no other contenders. There's no competition at that point. They just thought up the job, and then your note landed right in their lap. It's like, hey, I'm here. I can do it. I can do this if ever you're looking, right? You know what I mean? Okay, so that's how this works. Learn about how this stuff works. I got that in my course, or just get it from any other source. But, if you're wondering, people's behavior is based on like what their role is and how these things work behind the scenes. So learn as much about that stuff as you possibly can. Alex Roska says, I'm Romanian. I will make it more shorter. My line leader micromanages us out of the blue, and he helps us when we do changeover on the production machines. He keeps asking, all is okay. Is this okay, this? Okay. I'm just trying to see if you have a question. I mean, like you said something earlier, the out of the blue plan. That's why he helps us change it. Amar Ali says, okay, thanks. I think I get overexcited that time. Maybe that was my mistake or something else. Thanks, by the way. You're welcome, Amar Ali. It's all good, you know? Yeah, that was that CEO business. Yeah, listen, don't worry about it. Like, look, you know, the way this works is that it's like a long string of rejection, right? That's typical. It's like the sales process. I mean, that's what it is. It's you're selling yourself, right? And a lot of people are going to say no before you hear somebody say yes. That's just how it goes. You know, now you're the same person each time, right? You haven't changed. You still have the same education, the same experiences, the same personality, right? You know, okay, you might be able to like work on interviewing a little bit better and stuff like that, but basically you're the same person, right? Now, the thing that changes is the employer. You're always talking to a different employer. Some of them are just out to lunch. They don't have a clue what they're doing. Other ones, they just happen to be looking for something else than what you are, right? You know, they're looking for somebody very extrovert and you're introvert. Or they're looking for someone like with like, you know, a lot of experience. And that's not you, but you have a lot of education, but not a lot of experience. So it just didn't work out. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you have no value. It's just they're looking for something else. And if you play this game long enough, okay, you just so happen to find yourself in front of an employer who's looking for someone exactly like you, right? That's just how it goes. And then when, you know, you're in front of that person, it's easy because you're everything that they're looking for, right? It's not like you have to do a lot of things, you know, special. It just, they happen to be looking for all the stuff you have, right? So that's how these things work, okay? That's how the sales process works. That's how job search works. You know, recruitment and selection works like that, right? Every employer evaluates the value of a candidate differently. There is no one way that they assess a candidate, despite what anybody tells you. I used to teach this stuff in university and business school. You know, I mean, this is the thing. This is why you can apply for a job someplace and they like laugh you out of the building. You apply to the similar type job somewhere else and they welcome you in with open arms. They say like, wow, you're the best candidate we've ever seen. You know? Right? So that's the name of the game. It's a very serendipitous process. That means it's like just a matter of luck. The single biggest variable is random chance with this stuff. Being good at interviewing helps. Having like, you know, a good resume to get the interviews in the first place helps, right? And having that process down. But the biggest factor by far is always going to be random chance. And the more shots you get, the more leads you have, the quicker you're going to get hired in all likelihood. Okay, I have to wind this down pretty soon. It's been like an hour and a half, and before that I was here for an hour and a half. So let's see here. Alex Rosca says, I've got used to the program, but this micromanaging is intimidating for me, even if the line leader helps us. I'm appreciating his help, and I know that he wants to evaluate because I'm new. Okay. Right. Okay, listen. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. If you need more help, check out that course. That'll help you get hired. If you need to work on your communication skills in English, okay, you could check out that course. The link to all of these is in the description box under this live stream. Thank you for being here. I'm here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any questions about job search, you know, resumes, interviews, networking, all that kind of stuff, come back. This is the best way to reach me. I don't really respond to typing in comments on videos and stuff, but I do this instead. So I'll be back on Wednesday. Until then, I wish you the best of luck. Always remember, you're awesome. You know, you have value, no matter how depressing it is to be between jobs. You know what I'm saying? Take care of your mental health. Do the best you can. Learn all you can. And, you know, sooner or later, you're gonna get hired. So don't worry about it. And I'll be here if you have any questions. Thanks a bunch, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.